Hello, welcome to the Live to 110 podcast. My name is Wendy Myers, and you can find me at live to110.com and on my new website, mineralpower.com. Just launched this new site so that you can learn more about my healing and detox program. You can find this video podcast on my YouTube channel at Wendy Live to 110, and the corresponding blog posts will contain the video as well if you prefer to watch rather than just listen. Today I have Jen Springer on the podcast, and we're going to be talking about thyroid health and some of the problems that people can encounter when they have thyroid disease, what kind of supplements they should or shouldn't take. A lot of controversies surrounding the thyroid. I do a lot of shows on the thyroid because I think a lot of people today have low thyroid function for a lot of reasons that we're going to discuss today on the podcast. And you need to have proper thyroid function to have a healthy metabolism for so many reasons in the body that we're going to discuss today. Please keep in mind that this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Please be advised that anything we suggest today on the podcast, please consult your healthcare practitioner before engaging in anything today that we discuss. My friend Jen, Jen Springer has been immersed in natural health science since 2001, when her veterinarians invited her to a class about holistic animal care at their home. She saw profound results with some simple changes in her nutritional care. And from then, she pursued education in body work, nutrition, and herbology. Jen has taught thousands of people over the years on natural health for family wellness, pets, and even gardening. Empowering people with knowledge and tools to take back their health is her mission and her passion. So Jen, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this topic because, like you said earlier, it's rampant. It's the foundation of health. And if your thyroid is not online, everything is not going to work correctly.
Yes. Well, why don't we start? Just tell listeners a little bit about you and your practice and, just what you do and where to find you.
Well, I've been doing this since 2001, and I was always interested in natural healing in herbs. I found in the bookcase that's here behind me, there's a book in there from when I was a kid that was on herbs and spices. And I've always had an interest in that, but as most people know, it's overwhelming to learn about other stuff than obvious medication. You wonder if the person talking to you is just trying to sell you something. Are the herbs good? Are the nutrients that we need to take? Do we need to take all of them? How many? There's so many factors, and I was afraid to even get into it until my veterinarians asked me over to do a class that they were doing on natural things you could do for horse care. And I've had horses for a very long time, and I thought that was cool. So I went, and then my eyes were opened. I was able to say, because I trusted them. I'd known them for years, so I knew they weren't going to lead me down the wrong path. And that's how it all started. And it actually, the first thing I ever saw a huge difference in was the thyroid with my horses. I had two at the time, and both of them had low thyroid. Then I used some nutrition, some essential oils, and some supplements. And within 10 weeks, let's just say their thyroids were fully functioning at a normal level. And that's what literally, following those labs, I just went down the rabbit hole, and that's how the whole thing started. Mm-hmm. So, and now I've been practicing since then. And even today, I've had a couple clients, and I really love helping people with their nutrition. I still do body work because I love helping people even on that level, because I believe the body and the health of the body is, you're able to really facilitate that through body work. And then doing a lot of seminars and classes. I feel like I can reach more people through education versus even one-on-ones. But I still like to keep myself sharp by seeing clients just to stay in touch and not just be a theorist,
Yeah.
But our website that we're at is livegreen.solutions. Mm-hmm. We're still building it, so if somebody listens to this right away, it doesn't look totally done, but we can be reached through there. And plus, I have a little opt-in for people about detoxing their home there. It's kind of cool to get them some information.
Okay, great. Yeah, so let's launch into the thyroid. So A lot of people, go to their physician, they get their lab work. And can you tell us some of the problems involved in the standard lab ranges and why we probably shouldn't go by those?
It's like such a loaded question. First of all, if you can get your doctor to run the correct labs, that's the biggest feat of all. We typically want, of course, we want to see. Uh, they always run TSH, and they'll diagnose and treat based off of TSH, which is really not even a thyroid hormone, but it's a signaling hormone from the pituitary gland. But we look at the TSH as if, is the thyroid not listening? If it's not listening, the TSH is higher. And the more that the thyroid's not listening, the higher the TSH goes, because it's thyroid stimulating hormone, and it's not, it's the pituitary giving out the orders. But we also want free T4 and free T3. Those are really critical because those are the actual available hormones. And then I also like to look at reverse T3 and TPO antibodies, because most people, I've seen very few of the lab results that have come back that don't have any antibodies, because we'll get into that. That's a whole rabbit hole in itself. But then we also want to look and see and know that the T3 is going down the right channel by looking at the reverse T3. If people are under stress or they have estrogen dominance, or I've had a client recently whose reverse T3 was 85 and their T3 was 1. So we knew that it was all being shunted into reverse T3. So I like to look at that as well. So getting those labs are correct, but when you're reading them, it's even more. Let's say the ranges. The way I have been taught for the ranges, the TSH needs to be 1 or less, according to what I've learned, and that's what I use with my standard of practice. Then we know that the thyroid is listening. Depending on the person and what's going on with them, typically the T3 and T4, I want to see them in the ranges in the upper 2/3 to 3/4 of the range. Even if their free T3 are at about 3 or 3.2, they still have some hypothyroid symptoms. But I also want to look and make sure that it's converting. If I have a TSH, which I had one recently, the TSH was 0.98. It was a beautiful number. And the free T4, I don't remember if it was 1.3 or something like that. I don't remember the number, but it looked good. And that's the one where the T3 was 1. When the range goes, from 2 something, all these ranges, like you said, they're all different according to the lab, but that person's was like ridiculously low. And you want to look and see if they're in the same quadrants within the ranges to know if people are converting their hormones properly. And then, of course, we want antibodies to be about 0 or, And then the reverse T3, there's actually some mathematical calculations you can do with that to know if the number is correct. So really, to talk about it here is a little bit difficult, but there's actually some mathematical formulas you do to make sure that the reverse T3 is not dominating the T3. Mm-hmm. So there you go.
Yeah, I definitely, when I see clients that have reverse T3 above 10, I know they have a lot of toxins in their body. It's a sign of toxicity as well.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed when I see clients, they give me their medical labs to look over. And I'm amazed that some of them, the doctors have only tested TSH. And it's just insane to me. You need to do a complete thyroid panel, including antibodies. Or doctors will do a good thyroid panel, but usually only reverse, only like free T3 and T4, but no antibodies.
Right.
Like it's usually incomplete. So you really have to press your doctor to give you a complete picture of thyroid health.
And what I do a lot, because sometimes doctors will run only certain labs, and I'm sure you do the same thing. If they can get some of them run, often it's just TSH and T4, mm-hmm. and then I help them find like an Any Labs Now or walk-in labs or something like that, where they can go get the other labs taken that they need to in order for us to get a big picture of what's happening. Because we really can't without knowing those numbers. Like you said, people are diagnosing and prescribing based off of a TSH number, and it's just a fraction of the picture. So scary.
Yeah, and so so you were saying that when even if people's TSH is 0, so they presumably don't have Hashimoto's or autoimmune thyroid disease. Why is it misleading when their antibodies are only zero? Because you were saying when we were talking earlier that you think that most people that have hypothyroidism actually have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, part of the issue is that even with any of the labs, we're only catching a small snapshot of time as to what's really going on at that particular moment, at that time of the day, and it's going to vary. So if somebody, I use a symptom questionnaire. It's like a bazillion pages long. I mean, literally, it's like 20 pages long. And I have them go through and we really look at what's happening because, as you know, a lot of the thyroid stuff also looks like adrenal stuff. It also looks like hormone stuff. I mean, it's very confusing. So to really pin down what's the cause of the dysfunction, is it Hashi's or is it somebody just hypo, and sometimes people are a little bit on the edge or borderline, but, there's so many statistics that say that people, they say 90% of people who are hypo actually have Hashi's. So you can have all the strange things happening and not actually present with antibody numbers per se. Plus, there are other enzymes that the body could be, the body has many enzymatic processes, and the TPO enzyme is only one of many. And so there could be actually antibodies against other enzymes that are involved with the conjugation of thyroid hormones. So we're really only looking at like one little thing. But if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Yeah. I like that analogy.
Yeah. And I probably said that wrong because I always screw up analogies.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
you know what I mean, everybody.
Yeah, add your own twist to them. So if people have Hashimoto's, are they doomed? What is your take on that?
Yes. No. Well, I'm one of those fortunate people that have dealt with this. And when I first got my labs back, and being even a health practitioner, it was very frustrating because, I knew about hypothyroidism and stuff like that. And when I actually got back the labs, it had the high reverse T3 and the antibodies. I went to look out, and search out the information myself. And there is so much out there that basically says you're gloomed and, you're gloom and doom, and you're going to basically just suffer until you have enough problems, which you're going to deal with hyper and hypo symptoms, from time to time, and your life's going to be hell. And then eventually they'll just take out your thyroid gland. And that freaked me out. It totally freaked me out. And then, I worked with many practitioners and really nobody had an answer. And I was so frustrated. It was creating a lot of issues for me emotionally because thyroid, everybody's talking about the thyroid and Hashi's and how you got to do all these things. And, it is complicated, but it's not. And I'm really fortunate to have found a physician who is a specialist in thyroid. And he's so funny because I told him what was going on. I told him my numbers. And he said, do this and do that, and in 4 weeks, you will be fine, and we'll talk about how we cured your Hashimoto's. I'm like, you're so full of crap. I'm like, who is this guy, Because everybody else makes it this really huge thing, like you're just going to suffer for endless months and years forever. And you know what? In 4 weeks to the day, I took my labs. My T3 was 3.7. It was beautiful. My TSH was 0.7 something, and my antibodies were in half, and my reverse T3 was significantly reduced, down into normal ranges. And so I was like, all right, I'm totally listening to this guy. And that's how the passion for the thyroid really, that's how it happened for me. And of course, since then, and after I worked through all those issues, all of my clients, except for like one, are all female thyroid clients.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm. So what did he do? What did he do to bring your antibodies down so quickly?
Well, we use a whole bovine glandular for the thyroid replacement, which is only available through practitioners. It's not and there's a lot of crud out there about this too. It's not porcine, it's bovine, so it's a cow. And then it's the whole gland versus isolated, because I was on Thyroid for a couple years and I never saw or felt a difference, even though my numbers looked okay. Probably because the Hashis was never addressed. You know, the numbers were never run. And I had tried Armor and I couldn't even get off the couch. I don't know what happened with my situation, but it was just terrible. And I had discontinued my thyroid medication because I thought it was creating some issues. And when I tried to go back on it, my adrenals were so shot I couldn't even take it. It was terrible. And so when I talked to this physician, he said, no, you know, he goes, I've been using this in my practice for many years, and this is what I, you know, work with people. And, you know, there's a lot of theories out there. People say, oh, if you take, you know, glandular, you're going to create antibodies against the glandular and all that. And he, you know, asking him, he's like, that's crap, you know,
Yeah.
that's crap. And so that was a piece of it. That was a big piece of it. And then doing the magnesium and the selenium was a big part of it. And then, of course, iodine, which I did not start right away because I actually had antibodies, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Mm-hmm. But I also used, to bring down the numbers, I did not do iodine during those first 4 weeks because I was so freaked about my thyroid. And, you know, and you read all that stuff about Hashi's people and iodine. And so I'm like, I'm just going to do this without the iodine. And I used black cumin seed oil and other essential oils over my thyroid gland, and that is what brought down the numbers. So wow. I directly applied those to my thyroid right over, you know, at the base of the neck, and that is what brought down the inflammation. Because Hashimoto's thyroiditis, for any of you who had your medical terminology, itis means inflamed. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so when you've got an itis, you know, that's what it is. So there's something that's causing an inflammation in that thyroid. So you got to go after that. And that's what the black cumin seed oil and the essential oils went and helped normalize that. And that's what brought those numbers way down.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that's an excellent remedy for Hashimoto's, to put that black cumin seed oil on there.
Yes. It was so, like, 4 weeks. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Mm-hmm. I got my labs and I burst in tears of joy because thought I was going to be doomed forever with this problem.
Yeah, I find Hashimoto is actually one of the easier problems to resolve. I think people don't realize that it's not this big problem that, like you said, people make it out to be. It's actually not that difficult to resolve.
It's been sensationalized, you know, and there's thyroid summits and all this stuff that's going on out there, and they just make it, you know, they've got to sensationalize something. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's happened. And unfortunately, endocrinologists, and not all of them, but so many of them have, you know, drank the Kool-Aid, and their way of fixing it is waiting for it to be attacked to the point where it needs to be removed. Yeah. I mean, it's so incredibly sad. I've had so many clients who've had partial thyroidectomies and, you know, or full, and then what do? It's like, you know, you get that. It's like, sorry, I wish you found somebody sooner. Yeah. And it's really sad, you know, and I'm just glad that there are people like us out here that know, and then people that listen to this that can share this information and help people with their thyroids.
Yeah, I know. It makes me so sad when I belong to a bunch of thyroid groups on Facebook, and women that have a group, especially Graves, the doctor just wants to give the radiation therapy or remove it, and women are saying, oh, I have my appointment tomorrow to get my thyroid removed. I'm like, no, stop. No! But you know, they're going to listen to their doctor and they're going to do it, and they'll be on thyroid medication for life, and it won't work that well. No. But people, they have to, you know, take that journey. They're not able to find alternative healing methods, because you can heal or improve almost any condition using natural methods. And for people need selenium. I mean, every person I test is selenium deficient, maybe except for one person in Hawaii, because they have really selenium-rich soils. But you need selenium to produce thyroid hormones. So selenium is very important.
Yes, it's so important for glutathione too. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just an incredible mineral. And, you know, magnesium, another one. I mean, who has, you know, adequate magnesium levels? Like, nobody.
Yeah, no one. Everyone needs magnesium. Yeah, and the selenium I really like, that I prefer, is Life Extension S-E-methylselenocysteine. I think that's the best form out there. if you're going to supplement. That's what I personally take. So to iodine or not to iodine? I've had lots of people on the podcast, very well known, thyroid experts, that talk about studies that show when you take iodine, it increases thyroid antibodies, or can potentially increase thyroid antibodies and make the condition worse. What is your opinion on that?
Well, of course it does. The reason why, and not many people talk about the cause here, but the gentleman, and some of you have heard of him, his name is Dr. Roby Mitchell, that's who I work with directly. He says that what's the cause of Hashimoto's in the thyroid is Candida. It's fungus overgrowing in the thyroid. Mm-hmm. And guess the number one fungus killer, hands down, is iodine. So if you're taking iodine and it's making its way to the thyroid, and all of a sudden you're killing the Candida, you might have some symptoms of die-off, which could be apparent as a slight hyperthyroid symptom, maybe a little heart palpitation, maybe you'll get a little hot, maybe you'll feel a little racy or something like that. That can happen. That's why if you have Hashis, you must work with a practitioner that can help you with your increasing your iodine. Don't just start loading up iodine. If you're full-blown Hashis, you'll wind up like woo, because you're killing the fungus that's in the thyroid. And so you want to do that slowly if you have been diagnosed with the Hashis. Yeah. And it's the coolest thing. He showed us some research that he did, and he took petri dishes and he put in Candida and was growing Candida in all these dishes, and then he took fluconazole and put it in with the Candida, and it kind of took care of it, maybe a third of it, out of the dish. And then he did all other things, but then he did the iodine. And the drop of iodine in the dish with the Candida was like an atomic bomb. I mean, it killed, even at a super weak concentration, it completely wiped out the Candida. So that's why people get some Herxheimer response when they use the iodine, and they may appear to have an increase of antibodies or see a little hyper type of symptom. Even myself, when I take iodine, I have to take it slow, and I, even with my clients, I encourage them. I can't tell them what to do because I'm not a doctor, but I tell them start slow, do a dose, and then go for a week and see where you are, and then you can increase or stay the same or go backwards. Or if you start seeing all these symptoms of die-off that are too much to handle and that you don't work through, back off. And then there's often cofactors that are missing as well. If they're seeing iodine herxing as well, they're low in sodium and they're low in magnesium and vitamin C and things. There's other things that could happen with it, but yeah, to answer your question, absolutely they could see that response. But if when you go slow and there's no race to raise up and load up iodine, you just take your time, and when you balanced out, you can increase it till your body is able to assimilate that iodine at an appropriate level. And yeah.
Is there any type of iodine or form of iodine that you prefer?
Well, there's also, I'm never a one, I'm trying to be clever here and I'm failing, a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
I like to shake it up a little bit, everybody's doing the Lugol's, the potassium iodide and the iodine, and that's what most people do. But I also rotate in the nascent iodine. Mm-hmm. And if people are cooking and they can put some seaweed in their food, I mean, that's great too as well. Mm-hmm. But I think it's good to rotate things, and some people may agree, some people may disagree. I always do nascent because my body seems to really love it. Mm-hmm. And then I will bring in and do some Lugol's. I prefer, it's my own opinion, I prefer the liquid Lugol's. Mm-hmm. I also like to put it on topically, because I hate the taste of it so much. Mm-hmm. But, you could put it internally. The nascent tastes really good, so I do that one internally. But I put them together because I know that the breasts, need the iodine, and the thyroid needs iodine, the ovaries need the iodine. So I like to make sure that I'm getting a complete, how do I say, in all the other elemental forms that the body likes to to use.
Do you like recommending kelp supplementation?
Yes. Like I said, I like to see, just because I don't think the human being was meant to eat one type of thing. Even with foods, even when I work with people nutritionally, I really want people to eat all sorts of things and rotate all sorts of things into their diet. And if people are, all of us need iodine, especially when we live in the middle of the Midwest and we have no seafood anywhere. I mean, like I'm plunked right here in the goiter belt, and yes, absolutely love seeing the kelp and other forms of seaweed. I also, like I said, I prefer people get it that way, but people will also do the Lugol's, and I prefer the liquid Lugol's, which I would spaced out before where I was going with that, because it's easier to titrate up.
Yeah.
People, you can take the 12.5 pills, but that's a lot. I mean, like me, when I had antibody numbers, if I took 12.5, my heart was going crazy with palps. So at least with the Lugol's, the liquid, I could do a drop of 2%, which is a weaker percent. So I could go up slower. And because I feel, the Hashi's people, I was telling, I was carrying tablets before I was carrying the liquid here in my practice. And I just said, I tell them, cut, this pill into thirds. And then I'm like, wait a minute, let's just go with the liquid.
Yeah, yeah. I really like Detoxidrine by Global Healing Center. It's a nascent iodine.
That's the one I use.
Yeah, I really like that one.
I do too. My body loves that. Like, loves it. Like, I crave that one. And like I said, I'll put some Lugol's on my skin, and the nascent is doing its job, because when at first the Lugol's was absorbing really quick, and now when I put Lugol's on my skin, it's really not going in very fast. So, and I've been using that one that you were talking about, the nascent, that brand, and I really like it.
Yeah.
Really do.
Yeah, I do too. And it's really interesting you say that there's Candida infection in the thyroid. That's what I've always known to be true, is people have Hashimoto's. It's an infection the body is trying to attack.
Yes.
And another really good thing people can do is an infrared sauna.
Yes.
Infrared saunas heat up the body and kill off various infections in the body. It's also good when you have low thyroid function. You tend to have, if it's hypothyroid, you tend to have lower body temperature. So you tend to harbor more infections in your body because you don't have the body heat to kill them off. So doing an infrared sauna does a lot of different duties, including detoxing metals that might be in your thyroid, like mercury.
Yeah.
Mercury is the number one metal toxin that people harbor, and infrared sauna and other detox methods can really be helpful on a number of levels as well.
I was going to mention some of the whole why this becomes such a vicious cycle with the thyroid and the Candida, and you mentioned it, that's why I'm going there. The body temperature with a low functioning thyroid, the body temperature, we start to go, especially women, we start to go into a lower functioning state of the thyroid starting about age 26, age 27. So gradually we'll start to see a decline over time. So our body temperatures are going to drop, which keeps the critters, as we like to call them, the body temperature being an optimal level was keeping those critters in check. You just kind of cook them, your body would cook them. That's why we get a fever, it cooks the pathogens. But if our body is not getting up to temperature, it allows Candida to overgrow. I mean, Candida is always in our body. It's a scavenger. It does a great job of taking care of things in your colon that are like nasty, so it's got its place. But when it gets out of control is when it becomes a big problem. The other problem is that needs to very much be addressed with suboptimal thyroid function is low hydrochloric acid in the stomach. And I know this is totally, talking to what you teach, Wendy, is that if your thyroid's not functioning properly, your thyroid T3 hormone, I've got this huge long analogy of how I explain it, but T3 hormone is the mojo that makes your cells work. I mean, it's literally the spark plug that makes things happen, with ATP and all that. So if you don't have optimal, quote, energy, I'm not talking about feeling good and energetic. I mean your cells, the little factories can't run in your cells. Hydrochloric acid production takes massive amounts of ATP to make. And so your body conserves, and there's lower levels of HCl in your stomach, which most people are not optimal with their HCl in their stomach because, this thyroid thing is rampant. And therefore, the whole cascade of stuff happens. They can't digest their food, so therefore you don't have amino acids that are available. You don't have, then you get the food chunks floating around in their blood, and then they wind up leaky gut and all those allergies. They cannot pull the minerals out of their food because you don't have optimal HCl. That's what pulls, chelates the minerals right out. You don't have B vitamins are not being made either because the pH of the stomach is what determines the cascade of what happens in the small intestine and the large intestine. Bile being squirted out, pancreatic enzymes being squirted out. I mean, all these things happen based off of the correct pH of the stomach. And it just, and also the HCl sterilizes your food. So if there's any cooties growing on your food, why do some people get E. coli or some people get, food poisoning and other people don't? Because of, different people have different HCl levels that sterilize their food or not. And then what keeps Candida under control is that other word that everybody is saying now, SIBO, right? Everybody's SIBO, it's another whole thing. It's the HCl in the stomach is not high enough to drop the pH low enough in the stomach, because when that's correct, the pH of the small intestine is correct, which is alkaline, and then the acidic large intestine. So that does not happen unless the pH of the stomach hits that right point, and the pancreatic enzymes don't get delivered if the pH doesn't go low enough, and the gallbladder doesn't work right. Everybody's got a gallbladder problem. I mean, this is my soapbox. I'm like, woo!
I give everyone hydrochloric acid across the board, because if you have low thyroid, low adrenal functioning, you have toxic metals like arsenic and mercury that are proton pump inhibitors. Everyone needs more HCl because you need that down the line to make your enzymes and bile and all the other digestive, substances.
Yeah, you got nothing if you don't have HCl.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing. You can take all those expensive supplements in the world and eat organic and all that jazz, but if your HCl isn't there, you can't assimilate anything.
Yeah, and you need that until you can heal your adrenals and heal your thyroid and detox your body so that there's nothing interfering in hydrochloric acid production.
Yes.
So it's not forever, just a little while.
And too, because you won't be able to take what you used to take because it'll start making you uncomfortable, which is a good sign that you need to start cutting down.
Yeah. So a lot of people with thyroid, good thyroid labs, they go to the doctor, get tested. The doctor's like, oh, nothing wrong with you. Your thyroid labs look okay. Why do they still feel hypothyroid and have hypothyroid symptoms?
Well, there's two things. One is their labs may not be read properly, which I talked about earlier. They're reading off of TSH, and if somebody could they told me mine was fine because my TSH was 3.02, and now if I had a client that came that way, I'd be like, oh my gosh, we got to work with this. So a they're not working with it properly, but B, you've got other things that party along with the thyroid. There's the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals, and thyroid. They're like all friends, and they talk to each other and all that jazz. But somebody likes to take over when the thyroid's not appropriately working because all these reasons we've talked about. So those little adrenal glands are trying so hard to keep up, and they're trying to make your metabolism work. So you could be hypothyroid for a year, 10 years, or decades, depending on how old you are. So your adrenals are just like smoked. Mm-hmm. And you can't bring the adrenals back online unless your thyroid is back online. So the number one of many, like A, B, C, D, and E, there's like multiples, but you got to bring that thyroid back or your adrenals will never come back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's the symptoms may be caused by the thyroid being under functioning for so long that the adrenals need to be addressed. But then there's also other hormones that could create, things and symptoms or toxins or other digestive dysfunction that could also mimic thyroid. But generally, if you get the thyroid online and singing, a lot of that stuff will shake out, and then okay, now I need to address this underlying cause or whatever once we get the thyroid back.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how many clients will come to me and they just took their doctor's word for it that their thyroid's fine, without getting a copy of their labs
Yes.
and investigating them themselves. You cannot leave it up to doctors. You have to, take your health into your own hands. You have to take responsibility for your health. Get all the copies of all of your lab reports, everything, and investigate it yourself. Do your own homework, because many times the doctors will not treat until you're so far gone that it may be very difficult for you to come back. I mean, they'll only treat you. They won't treat you if you have subclinical, like your TSH was 3. That's considered subclinical. That's not considered for many doctors worthy of treatment. Why not catch it early? Why wait until you're very, very sick?
No, and one thing I do want to talk about also that most people don't realize is that diabetes is directly related to thyroid function. And, there are 2 hormones that facilitate sugar getting into the cell. And there's a huge dependence on cortisol and also on T3 to bring fuel into the cell. And if you don't have enough thyroid hormone, T3, the active form, your glucose isn't getting into the cell. Therefore, you have high glucose levels in the blood, which we eventually call diabetes, which creates insulin resistance and blah, blah, blah. You got that. And then I was also low cortisol as well as being low thyroid. So, low cortisol, then you get like hypoglycemia and you get all this other weird, like I was eating like a perfect angel. I mean, like you couldn't even have ate any better than I ate. I mean, really. And then my A1C was still 5.7, which according to standard medicine is like, okay, you're still okay. But personally, I don't like to see it above 5.5. So I was dancing with some not so good stuff. And then I started doing the thyroid supplementation, and that A1C dropped to 5.1, and I didn't change anything in the diet.
Yeah.
That T3 was allowing that glucose to, I felt like I had low blood sugar all the time. I'd eat every 3 hours.
Yeah.
If I did not eat every 3 hours, I was having a panic attack because of my blood sugar being low. So I took care of the adrenals along with the thyroid, especially the thyroid. When I first started taking the glandular, within an hour, I literally stopped shaking because my blood sugar, I was tremoring all the time. And when I took that thyroid, it was like, holy cow.
Yeah, I give all my clients glandulars, whether it be adrenal or thyroid and adrenal and pituitary, because it's so important for the minerals. It's very, very mineral rich. It gives the thyroid adrenals the food that it needs to heal, regenerate, and function. Like if people have lost tissue, thyroid tissue from Hashimoto's, the body's been attacking it for years, the thyroid glandular can help to regenerate the tissue.
Yes, it's got that DNA and RNA in there that the body's got a little blueprint plus the amino acids and all that stuff, and it's powerful, and when you take a glandular, you're getting all the thyroid hormones, T1, T2, T3, T4, and plus all that DNA information. And then you said the minerals and all that other goodness. So I'm a huge fan. Like I love it. Even with a client, you get some clients that just start taking too much, because they just do that. And the worst thing that I've ever seen happen with somebody that takes too much glandular is that they'll poop more.
Yeah.
They'll call me and they're like, wow, my balls are really moving.
Yeah.
I'm just like, you might want to back down.
Yeah, and it's stimulating. Like, I was taking too much at one point, getting a little too happy-pappy with it. And I was just really, wired and awake, and I had trouble going to sleep. So, you got to find that sweet spot. And it gives you energy, which is great. A lot of people with low thyroid are low energy. Yeah. So it really kind of gets everything working again. It's wonderful.
And, for people, and I'm sure you get this all the time, people often ask, well, I'm on Armor, I'm on Synthroid, I'm on Nature-Throid. What is the equivalent dose? You got to work with a practitioner to help you with that, that's qualified. And you also need to, talk to your doctor, because you just don't stop your medication in order to switch over to a glandular, because it's not a good thing. You need to be guided with it. And they work different, but they're very effective, but you need to have guidance with that.
Yeah. Yeah, you never want to stop your medication without the guidance of your physician. Absolutely.
Yes.
So do you think people can, eventually when they begin healing their thyroid, for some people, can they stop their medication?
I've seen that happen, yes. There's so many reasons, and like we said, we don't know how the body's. We're not looking inside the body. We can't see what's exactly happening. But for so many people, their issue is the conversion of T4 to T3, and there's a hitch in the giddy up there. So when people are prescribed medications that are T4 only, they don't do well on those. They see all their thyroid symptoms or worse because they can't convert. And so getting a professional that can help them with that's really an appropriate thing to do. And then when the thyroid, just like everything else, I had a really wise teacher one time tell me, he goes, your body never makes a mistake. And so if your thyroid is under functioning, then the body is telling you something is wrong. And then you address the issues that created the hypothyroidism. Very often you can bring it back online. Mm-hmm. I also have another theory on that too, is I believe that our culture and our heritage, for most people, we're so far away from what we should be eating. But I believe that our ancestors would eat these glands. And we would be getting them through our soup stocks, through sweetbreads, even though nobody likes to eat those nowadays, and we would be getting those glands that we are now taking in a freeze-dried pill, that we're meant to eat them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, I think you're right. People have been taking them forever.
Yes.
But they just didn't know it.
Yeah, you think about it, if we were living a couple hundred years ago, or even 100 years ago, a little more now that we're in this age, but, we would be making stocks with that. We would be making sweetbreads. We would be, eating them in some way, and we would be getting that. The reason why I think about this, I feel so strongly about it, is because of looking at my cats. And why are cats developing all these weird diseases when they are living in our homes? Even if we're giving them, cooked food, raw foods or whatever. And I believe it's because the cats that are out hunting are eating the whole beast, whatever they're eating, a bird or a mouse or a rabbit. They will eat the whole thing. They're getting the bones, the glands, the organs, and all that. And they need that in order for their body to function properly. And I'm like, well, what's same with us? How many times have we made head cheese? Mm-hmm. Not. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I'm like, I'll take liver pills, I'm all for that, taking those organs and glands. And in the ancient times, our ancestors, the rich and the elite of the society would eat the organs and the glands and the brain. Mm-hmm. And the peasants would be given the meat. And so what does that tell you, right?
Yeah. I went to a restaurant the other day. I had some calf brains. It was calf brain ravioli.
How was that?
It was really good. It was really, really good. I do my foie gras pâtés, and I get my glands and my organs. Pretty tasty. I like them. A lot of people are like, no, I'll take the liver pills. Thanks.
Did you feel smarter? Well,
I'm always searching for that feeling, but not quite, not that night.
No, that's why I feel like if, we can eat as many things as possible, and really get back to the way that our ancestors ate before all this happened, the fermenting the foods and stocks and, eating raw when it's appropriate in the season and, all these things, going with the seasons and eating locally, it really makes a difference in our health. Our body was meant to run that way,
Yeah.
Just huge.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit I want to talk about calcium. I want to add to this conversation.
Yeah.
When I do hair mineral analysis and test a lot of people, and they have really high calcium levels. If you have high calcium, large amounts outside of the cell membrane, calcium will block receptor sites to allow thyroid hormones and glucose to get into the cells. So sometimes when people have certain conditions in the body that cause them to build up a lot of calcium in the tissues, this can inhibit thyroid hormones from getting the cells. Even if they have normal thyroid labs and they still have thyroid symptoms, this is one of the problems, that this mineral imbalance that needs to be corrected. Usually it's from magnesium deficiency and adrenal fatigue that causes it. But it's another thing that can inhibit thyroid functioning.
Yeah, that good old magnesium. We just need to bathe in it all the time.
Yeah, you can't get enough.
No, not at all. I've been using a lot of magnesium citrate, topically. No, chloride. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
chloride. And I'm really liking that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, do yourself a favor. Don't spread it on your legs. I had one time, the first time I used it, I sprayed it all over my legs.
Oh,
And I was
no.
like, and I started itching. Like all my legs started itching, and it was really, really uncomfortable. And thought, maybe you're not supposed to use it that way.
That's really funny. Oh my gosh. I can do it from the knee down to the ankle. And then I also like to get the flakes, the magnesium chloride flakes, and soak before bed. It really helps you relax before bed. Put a little lavender oil in there and get your cortisol levels back where they need to be. It's really very, very nice way to end the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so let's talk about Graves.
Yes.
I've talked a lot about on this show about hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. What's going on when someone have what's called Graves' disease?
Well, from what I've had in my experience in my practice and what I've been taught is that it's no different. The body just has responded with the hyper response versus a hypo response. So the same rules apply, except if you do the selenium, the iodine, the magnesium, like the other big mineral, and you do your antifungals. The other huge component that we haven't really talked about is my clients, I all have them do an antifungal diet. It's called the BALI diet, Bali diet, which is basic, B for basic, A for antioxidant, and also alkaline. L's for LI is low insulin, so it's a blood sugar balanced, and the foods that are on that diet are very antifungal. So we do the Bali food diet, we do the HCl, the enzymes. This is the protocol, the antifungals over the thyroid gland, and then we wait. And what usually happens with a Graves person, and I've seen it happen, is they'll go from hyper down to hypo.
Yeah.
And then it's time to bring in the glandular, and then the glandular will help that thyroid repair itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like that's just the way their body responded to whatever's happening, and then we can, we just hang out with them until they drop, and then boom, then they got to bring in the nourishment to help repair.
Yeah. So no removing the thyroid.
No.
No, it's like, there's no medication for it. Just cut it out.
Yeah, let's just take it out. Let's just kill it.
Let's take care of the problem there.
I know, it's so crazy, and and to have a hyperthyroid storm, whether you're Hashi's or your Graves, it's a nightmare, and it can be lethal, and it's scary. And so have your team of practitioners helping you, but it's going to take time to repair the damage, but it can happen pretty darn quick if you are doing your protocol correct, and you're sticking to your protocol.
So why do you think thyroid problems are so common today?
Oh, you got like 3 weeks to talk about that answer?
I mean, not to mention the chlorine and fluoride in the water.
Yeah, that's a whole soapbox in itself. And the electromagnetics and all that jazz. I think there's a few things. One is, our mineral deficient soil. The foods that we're eating are so void of anything substantial. Most people, the people that are eating the rich vegetables, often we can't pull out the minerals because of our low HCl in our stomach. So that's a huge piece of it, And I also know that I've been taught that, our parents, most of us that are listening, depending on your age, we also, both of my parents were exposed to heavy radiation from the atomic bomb testing and the nuclear stuff that happened in the 1940s with World War II. And my parents were children when that happened. And that radiation doesn't just stay in the area. It goes around the planet. So there's that. Like I said, there's nutrient deficiencies. And also stress will stress on the body will deplete the body of everything functioning correctly, and then the body will not. There's this interesting thing that the adrenal glands, help the body stay up to par with the stressors that are happening, but over time, your adrenals just give you the big, middle finger and say, I'm going to shut you down whether you like it or not. And this goes into the RT3 thing. And your body can go into that hypo state even from adrenal. I don't like to use the word fatigue, but it's dysfunction because we've been living dysfunctionally,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons, but I feel like that's a big one. And the number one thing is the nutrient deficiencies. Really, we're just not eating those minerals that you and I have talked about the way we should. We're not getting the amino acids. We're not digesting properly. We're not getting the selenium and the iodine. I mean, we're in the Midwest here. Am I going to get iodine unless I'm eating like black walnuts or something like that? And how often do we get those? Yeah. I mean, it goes back to that. It goes back to nutrition. It always goes back to the fork.
Yeah, and the chlorine and fluoride, these are substances added to most people's tap water, and we are drinking it and we are bathing in it every single day. And these further add to the problem. Most people are already iodine deficient, and then this chlorine and fluoride blocks iodine uptake in the thyroid. And it compounds the problem. So you have to drink filtered water.
And you got to make sure your filter takes out fluoride, which most of them don't. And then I'm going to beat my drum here a minute on bromine, which I know you know about bromine too. And I've got clients, I'll just say this, bromine, people are like, well, am I going to eat bromine? Well, brominated flour is one of them. Mm-hmm. And bromine is also in some of people's favorite beverages called Mountain Dew. That's why it's such a pretty green. And I had a client, mind you, this is a Hashi's client who's had half of her thyroid removed. And so we started doing iodine with her. And then she's texting me because she's having all of these issues of mucus. Mm-hmm. And then she's going on. And, before she even told me, she had on rounds of antibiotics. And I said, by the way, is it bright green? And she's like, well, yeah, it's like this funny color green. And it's coming out of her nose, and she's coughing it up. Mm-hmm. I said, just keep doing your iodine, sweetie. The iodine was displacing the bromine, and she was purging it through the mucus out of her sinuses and out of her lungs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was like, I almost wanted to ask her for a picture, but that's kind of gross. The wall of fame, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and they add bromine to jacuzzis. Some places don't use chlorine, but they add it to pools and jacuzzis. So.
Yes, I know, and it's all it goes into halogen displacement, and the halogens they're kind of floozies, and if iodine isn't in the receptor, other halogens can go in the receptors, and fluoride is a big floozy. Fluoride likes to disrupt things, and so does chlorine and bromine. And chlorine, I mean, it's funny that there's been a lot of research that has shown that in women that have breast cancer, they've got high levels of chlorine in their breast tissue. Mm-hmm. Well, why would that be? Well, one of the major areas of the body that has an iodine reserve is the breast tissue. So if a woman is deficient in iodine, guess who displaced it? It was chlorine. Chlorine went into those receptors, and that's why it appeared that way. So, yeah, so good.
Yeah, and a great way to detox chlorine and fluoride and bromine is an infrared sauna as well.
I love it. I did infrared the other day. I love infrared saunas.
Yeah, very, very important. Yeah, well, I guess, so let's talk about some of the therapies. Like some of the therapies aren't going well. What else may need support to, help heal your thyroid?
Well, the other thing that, if you're looking at the thyroid and that you're working on that, and it doesn't seem to be going quite right. The next thing, there's three things I look at after that. There's so many. We got to be good detectives as practitioners to help people find their way. But adrenal dysfunction is the first one. If somebody's adrenals have been toasted for too long, the adrenal just needs some help and some support. In order for T3 to go into the cell, you also need cortisol. And if somebody is, having cortisol that is too low, the T3 can't be used. And that's why I've had this happen where I took my medication and I had extreme hyperthyroid symptoms because the T3 wasn't getting into the cell and was just floating around the body. Also, if your cortisol is the other way and it's too high, that blocks T3 proper conversion. So there's a lot that goes with the adrenals. The adrenals need to be assisted, as well. And it's usually almost all the time this needs to happen. Another thing that can happen and disrupt is problems with hormones, especially estrogen dominance. Estrogen is an antithyroid hormone, and progesterone is a prothyroid hormone. So women, men can be in this thing too, but more often than not, women, especially women who are perimenopausal or menopausal, or most of women who are estrogen dominant. I can just look at somebody and I can tell you exactly what's going on with them these days, which is really scary.
Yeah.
But I mean, I mean, you can see these women, you're like, okay, I can see where you've got this fat ring around your neck, so your thyroid is something going on there, and I'm reading their eyebrows and, the whole thing. But the estrogen dominance really causes a problem for the thyroid. So, if you've got unexplained weight gain and, your thyroid numbers look okay and, you're doing okay, with your diet and all that, have, your hormones looked at, including the metabolites, because sometimes the dominance is actually showing in the metabolites. Another thing that can happen too is the blood sugar. Having blood sugar issues can greatly affect the thyroid, and the Candida, of course, can affect the thyroid. So those are like probably the top four. Is the adrenals, the Candida, the blood sugar, and the estrogen. And then there's toxicity as well. I always, when I'm working with somebody, I always address toxicities just through their diet. Helping them decide what foods to eat, so that they're automatically detoxifying. And like you said, doing some far infrared, making sure they're sweating, getting them moving out of sedentary, they're not sitting on their butt all day, and finding out what their lifestyle is about, meditation, breathing, these things that, where we've gotten so off track, helping people find their center. And we see what shakes out if we got to dig even deeper.
Yeah, and so with the estrogen dominance, I think a lot of women are confused because they go to their doctor, they're perimenopausal, menopausal, and their estrogens are low. So yes. Can you talk a little bit about that and the issue with xenoestrogens?
Yeah, the xenoestrogens, or xenos like fake estrogen, we've got so many pollutants and toxins from the environment, from especially plastics. And those things can mimic estrogen. There are some foods in herbs that are phytoestrogenic, but, I think, in my opinion, I know some doctors that tell clients or their patients no estrogenic foods,
But they're weak. They're weak. Huh? They're weak estrogenic foods.
Yes, they're very weak. And a lot of them, women can be estrogen dominant and estrogen deficient at the same time. And so they could be dealing with the xenoestrogens, which are stored in the fat, and that when you start sauna or you start to do weight loss, you start to get a release of those things, and you can detoxify those out. Your liver, the liver dysfunction is a huge piece of this. When the liver is not functioning properly, guess who conjugates the estrogens? Well, it's the liver, and also the good bacteria that are in the liver as well, and in the digestive tract help to facilitate the estrogen conjugation. There's many forms of estrogen in the body, and so to go from the weaker like estriol to estradiol and doing all these conversions, the body it needs to be harmonized and doing its thing. But I've also found that looking at hormones, if they are presenting, because part of my questionnaire shows, ask them about estrogen dominance and estrogen deficiency, and if they're showing both, then we can look at, is it like estradiol is really high and there's no estriol, or we could look at, the metabolites. The 2-alpha hydroxy and the 16-alpha hydroxy estrogens metabolites. And sometimes those are really high, and it's kind of a game, and you gotta do a little bit of homework in order to find out what's really happening. And unfortunately, even every day of the month is different for a woman as well, trying to figure out, is she actually her rhythm off? Where's progesterone in the whole scheme of things?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot with hormones.
Oh yeah, it's very, very complicated. As women are
I
very,
know.
very complicated beings.
I'm going through that myself. I'm like, WTF, man.
Yeah.
Like where, I didn't realize my entire life that I've had thyroid and hormone issues. And I never thought of, I thought if it was bad that my doctors would have addressed it. And now I'm in full force perimenopause, like hardcore, beyond hardcore. I'm thinking, for 35 years, why didn't anybody do anything about this? This goes back to what you and I talked about with lab work and just treating symptoms and stuff. And what if I had had this corrected when I was in my early teens, when I first started menstruating? It's beyond me, and that's why I'm sure for you, I love to help people, get this back. I didn't start getting a normal period until I was in my early 30s. Just by detoxifying and eating good foods and changing my lifestyle, I was able to get my cycle every month versus once a year.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. It takes time. It takes time to heal the thyroid, adrenals, detox, and change your diet. Roma's not built in a day. It takes time
No.
to turn that ship around. So no, we're not proposing any miracles over here. Just takes time to figure out what's going on through, various tests. And then there's a lot of work on the part of the patient or the client, because most of the work is on them. They have to do the dirty work, and it's not popping a pill, which is what the doctor usually offers.
No, and it's really, even if like you're taking thyroid, sometimes you might feel, whether you're on a nutrition program. Okay, you guys, you work with Wendy or you work with me or whoever you're working with, and we help you decide what foods to eat and how to supplement your diet, and you don't feel great in a month. Well, even when you bring your body back online, you're working with healing decades of things that are going on, and you've got to stick with it. And even with the thyroid, okay, you might start feeling good in a couple of weeks, but then, for all the metabolic changes that have to happen at the deepest levels of your body, even like what we talked quite a bit about, even detoxifying, your body has a lot of stops in place in order to detoxify. But if you don't have enough ATP to do it, you're not digesting your food and you're not detoxifying anything. And then you wonder why you're fat and bloated and you feel like a big pile of junk.
Yeah.
Right? Been there, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that takes time. That's like you saying that over and over and over. And sometimes people feel worse when they start in a healing program.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they think, oh, you made me feel worse. And they want to find the next practitioner that's going to give them that magic bullet and make them feel better. Usually people do have to feel worse before they get better. But once you start mineralizing your body, people's energy levels begin going up. You get them sleeping better, their energies level, and they slowly start improving in increments. But it's kind of like the stock market, kind of goes up and then down, and then it goes up a little bit and down. But over time, you feel better.
The thing that's interesting, that really put that whole mineral thing in place for me in perspective is that, our body works off of little enzymatic processes. Nothing happens when your body does anything. Your body makes enzymes and makes your chemist in your body will convert things to make stuff for your body to use, or your body, to take stuff out of your body that shouldn't be there. And all of those enzymes that make everything work are all dependent off of minerals and B vitamins. So if you don't have minerals, like, Wendy and what you do and with what you specialize in, if you don't have minerals, you don't have nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing.
You can't copy your DNA properly.
No.
You can't do anything. You can't shunt nutrients into your mitochondria to make energy.
No.
I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Nothing happens without those. And so popping a B vitamin and drinking some coffee in the morning, it may give you a temporary fooling that something's happening, but and everything goes deeper over time. How you can see some surface improvements, but to get to the deepest parts of your being, the deepest tissues of your body, it takes time. And so you've got to stay, you got to just stick on your regimen. And it's not a special diet. It's a new lifestyle, and if you want to live vibrantly and have beautiful skin and look trim and whatever trim means to you and have the energy to do those things, it's a lifestyle. It's not a fix. It's not a temporary thing.
Yeah. And you have to take supplements for life.
Yes.
You have to take them forever. People ask me, how long do I have to take all these pills? Like, forever. They're not in the soil.
Yeah.
They're just not missing in the soil. Even if you eat organic, the only people that are doing good, they grow their own vegetables. They're master gardeners. They're remineralizing the soil. They're using cow poop and all kinds of other wonderful things to give lots of nutrients to their food. That's my uncle. My uncle's doing that in Texas.
Cool.
But most people aren't. He's been gardening massive garden, and he's been doing it for 30 years. But that's not most people.
No, it's not. And, there are just things you need to take. That's period. End of story.
Yeah.
And that's part of your budget. It's part of your health program, I guess, for you to create for yourself. Everybody listening is to make sure that you set aside, a budget to take care of yourself, just as if you need water and sleep in order to keep that nourishment in your body, so you don't wind up with some majorly awful thing, dis-ease when you get older, and that you live. They say that people that eat well, and they do their supplements and they exercise, their terminal decline, as we like to call it, their ending of life, that terminal decline is much shorter for people that are healthier, because they just kind of go along and poof, they're gone one day. Yeah. Versus somebody, you know what I mean? Just like how we all want to go, right? Your terminal decline is short. Yeah. And then for those people that eat junk and have bad attitudes and don't rest and they're stressed out and whatever's going on with them, eat, drink, smoke, and whatever they're doing, they seem to go on and be ill for decades before they die.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see that. That's what we're seeing today. People just have this steady 10-year decline or longer, and it's miserable. Absolutely. True. Totally preventable for most people.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, Jen, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We've gone well over. Such a engaging conversation, and I know it's so educational for so many women and men out there trying to heal their thyroid and heal their health issues. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here, and I hope that all of you took great notes, and you can listen again if you need to take more notes.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yes, I am all over the place. You can find me, probably the best place is our new website. Like I said, if you're coming on shortly, it's not fully done, but it's livegreen.solutions, and you can see the stuff there, and you can get I think it's 10 ways to detox your home and your body right now. You can get that there. And then I'm on YouTube, Jen Springer channel. You can find me there. I'm all over. If you search me, I'm all over the place. But those are probably the two best places to find me.
Okay, great. Well, listeners, tune in. Go check Jen out, her website, her YouTube channel. And if you want to learn more about me, you can go to live to110.com and go to mineralpower.com. It's a newly launched website to help you get your life back, so you can remineralize your body, detox your body, and get the energy and the mental clarity that you deserve. So everyone, thank you so much for listening to the Live to 110 podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Great to be with you.
Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Well, I'm a practicing physician and a researcher based in Boston at Harvard Medical School, Harvard School of Public Health, and Boston Children's Hospital. And I've been looking at ways to think about food independent of calories, beyond the calorie in, calorie out model of weight control, which I hope we can get into, has not worked very well. But instead, to see food as so much more. Every time we eat, we alter our hormones, metabolism, even the expression of our genes in ways that can take us toward a healthy weight or weight gain, toward freedom from chronic disease or a likelihood of heart disease or diabetes. And this is all relating to how the metabolic effects of food far beyond the calorie content.
So how did you become interested in nutrition?
Well, I went to medical school and like so many medical students, got very little training in nutrition. We tend to focus a lot on drugs and surgery, although ironically, diet causes most cases of chronic disease. And, we don't have so much obesity, heart disease, or diabetes because we have a genetic requirement for drugs that have yet to be discovered. So I got interested in this, and since I had very little training in nutrition, I didn't start thinking about diet in a conventional way. I started thinking about it as an endocrinologist, which is my clinical focus and my area of research, hormones, how food affects hormones. Mm-hmm. And that leads to some very surprising and alternative ways of thinking about weight control.
Yeah. I love it that you're a physician that's thinking out of the box, that's thinking more about nutrition, because that's what I think I complain about a lot on the podcast is physicians that are not tending to nutrition and supplementation, because these are one of the main underlying root causes of disease. So I applaud you for that, and that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. So you wrote a book, Always Hungry. What is the basic message of your book that that your message that you're trying to get out to the masses?
Yeah, well, the premise is simple but provocative. Although I will argue that it's based on a century of solid research and research we've done in my group for the last 20 years. The premise is that overeating doesn't make you fat, at least not over the long term. The process of getting fat makes you overeat. So let me explain that. Something has triggered our